Have you ever noticed how quickly people panic when someone says they don't really have friends? Not in a dramatic way, not in a tragic way, just honestly. I don't really have friends. That sentence makes people uncomfortable. They rush to explain it away. They assume something must be wrong. They treat it like a problem that needs fixing. But psychology is rarely that simple, because having no friends does not automatically mean loneliness, and having friends does not automatically mean connection. In fact, some of the most psychologically complex people you'll ever meet are people with no friends, or very few. And not because they failed socially, but because something deeper happened. To understand the psychology of people with no friends, we need to start by letting go of the stereotype. This is not just about social awkwardness. It's not just about introversion, and it's definitely not about being unlikable. Often, it's about protection. People assume friendship is a basic human need, and it is. But what we need isn't people, it's safety. And for some people, friendships stopped feeling safe a long time ago. Many people with no friends didn't start out that way. They tried, they showed up, they cared deeply. They were the ones who listened, who remembered birthdays, who supported others quietly. And over time, something happened. They noticed imbalance. They were always the one reaching out, always the one understanding, always the one adjusting. And slowly, without drama, they learned a painful lesson. Connection doesn't always mean mutuality. So instead of fighting for closeness that felt one-sided, they pulled back. Not loudly, not angrily, just quietly. For some people, having no friends isn't a lack, it's a boundary. Another major psychological factor is emotional maturity. As people grow, their tolerance for shallow connection drops. Small talk feels empty. Social performances feel exhausting. Being around people without feeling understood feels worse than being alone. So they choose solitude. Not because they hate people, but because they respect their own energy. This is where many people misunderstand loneliness. Loneliness isn't the absence of people, it's the absence of resonance. You can be surrounded and still feel alone, and you can be alone and still feel whole. People with no friends often fall into the second category, but society doesn't recognize that as valid. If this part resonates with you, pause for a second and let me know in the comments. Not with a story, just with a simple, "This makes sense." You're not alone in recognizing it. Another layer that often goes unseen is betrayal. Many people with no friends have been deeply hurt socially. Not once, repeatedly. They trusted the wrong people. They were vulnerable at the wrong time. They were honest in environments that punished honesty. So their nervous system adapted. It learned that distance equals safety, that closeness requires risk, and risk is optional. This doesn't make them cold, it makes them cautious. They don't avoid friendship because they don't value it. They avoid it because they understand the cost. There's also a strong link between having no friends and high self-awareness. When someone becomes deeply aware of who they are, they become selective. They stop trying to fit. They stop forcing compatibility. They stop shrinking to belong. And that reduces the pool of people dramatically. Not everyone can meet depth with depth. Not everyone wants emotional honesty. Not everyone is comfortable with silence, nuance, or complexity. So the person with no friends isn't rejecting people. They're rejecting misalignment. Another uncomfortable truth is that some people with no friends are emotionally self-sufficient. They learned early how to self-regulate, how to process emotions internally, how to sit with themselves without distraction. Friendship for them becomes optional rather than necessary. That can look intimidating to others. People often bond over shared needs, shared struggles, shared dependencies. When someone doesn't need you in that way, they can feel unreachable. So distance forms, not because of rejection, but because of difference. Let's talk about introversion versus isolation. Introversion is about energy. Isolation is about fear. People with no friends are often labeled introverted, but many aren't. They can talk, they can connect, they can be warm. They just don't want to do it superficially. They don't want to perform friendliness. They want authenticity. And when authenticity isn't available, they choose solitude instead. There's also a phase many people go through where friendships dissolve naturally. After major life transitions, after heartbreak, after loss, after personal growth, you outgrow people. Not because they're bad, but because you're no longer the same person who needed them. This phase is deeply misunderstood. It looks like social failure from the outside, but psychologically, it's integration. You're shedding versions of yourself that no longer fit. And yes, this phase can feel lonely. But loneliness doesn't mean it's wrong. It often means you're between chapters. Another reason people end up with no friends is emotional honesty. Ironically, honesty repels more people than it attracts. When someone speaks directly, sets boundaries, refuses to play social games, they're often labeled difficult or too serious or too intense. So people drift away. Not because honesty is wrong, but because it's uncomfortable. People with no friends often didn't lose people by being cruel. They lost them by being real. There's also the factor of emotional labor. Some people stop having friends because they got tired of carrying others, always being the therapist, always being the support system, always being strong. Eventually, they ask a quiet question: who carries me? And when there's no answer, they stop showing up. Not out of bitterness, out of exhaustion. If you've ever felt like friendship required you to disappear emotionally, that's not friendship, that's performance. And people who stop performing end up alone, temporarily or long-term. Now let's talk about something important. Not everyone with no friends is at peace. Some are lonely, some are hurting, some are grieving connection, and that matters. Choosing solitude is different from being stuck in it. Psychologically healthy solitude feels calm. Unhealthy isolation feels heavy. The difference isn't how many people you have, it's whether you feel chosen or abandoned. If you're watching this and you have no friends and it hurts, that pain is valid. It doesn't mean you failed, it means something in your environment didn't meet your emotional needs, and that can change. If you're watching this and you have no friends and you feel okay, even grounded, that's valid too. You don't owe society an explanation. Friendship is not a moral requirement, it's a relational preference. The most important thing to understand is this: people with no friends are not broken. They are often more reflective, more self-aware, more emotionally complex, more selective. They feel deeply, they think carefully, they notice things others ignore. And those traits don't always thrive in casual social environments. If this video feels personal, I want you to comment, even if it's just a single word. Sometimes being seen starts with being honest anonymously. And if you want more long-form psychology like this, content that doesn't shame, doesn't label, and doesn't oversimplify, subscribing is how you'll see it when you need it. Not everyone is meant to have a crowd. Some people are meant to have depth. Some are meant to have solitude. Some are meant to walk alone for a while. And that doesn't mean something is missing. It often means something important is forming.